Hello, I'm Esther Gidou-Yuat. It's Tuesday, April 19th. This is Africa 54.
South Africa's Kwazulu-Natal province is under a state of emergency following devastating flooding. Displaced African students find that life in Poland is vastly different than life in Ukraine. Africa 54 Health Correspondent Linord Moudou speaks with the Africa CDC Director in a wide-ranging interview. Those stories and more on today's Africa 54.
South African President Cyril Ramaphosa has declared a national disaster after the worst flooding in recorded history in Kwazulu-Natal province. Paul Ndiho has more.
It's been more than a week since torrential rains soaked South Africa's eastern coast, but the search continues for people missing in the subsequent floods. South African President Cyril Ramaphosa announced a three-pronged approach to how the government intends to deal with the disaster, focusing on immediate relief, recovery, and rebuilding.
First, we will focus on the immediate humanitarian relief, ensuring that all affected persons are safe and that their basic needs are met. Second, we will focus on stabilization and recovery, rehousing people who have lost homes, and restoring provision of services. And thirdly, we will focus on reconstruction and rebuilding.
Ramaphosa explained how the government's approach is being thoroughly supervised and corruption will not be tolerated while dealing with the disaster.
Learning from the experience of the COVID-19 pandemic, we're drawing together various stakeholders to be part of an oversight structure to ensure that all funds disbursed to respond to this disaster are properly accounted for and that the state receives value for money.
Authorities have reported over 440 deaths because of the flooding disaster. Thousands of troops are deployed to the flood-ravaged Kwazulu-Natal province, where residents are still searching for the missing, more than a week after the torrential rains began. Flooding and mudslides have left thousands homeless, knocked out power lines and water services, and disrupted operations at one of Africa's busiest ports, Durban. Officials say overall infrastructure damage is estimated at more than $684 million. Paul Ndiho, VOA News, Washington.
Congolese authorities say that two drunken Congolese soldiers have gunned down a total of 15 people in separate attacks in the Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo. One intoxicated soldier killed 8 passengers and wounded 7 Monday aboard a boat on Lake Tanganyika. A local army spokesman says the soldier, Lukusa Kabamba, was then beaten up by angry residents before he could be arrested and died from his injuries. Another soldier shot and killed the bodyguard of a colonel before killing the colonel and 5 civilians at Bambu in Jugu territory of Ituri province. Dozens of African refugees and migrants held a sit-in in front of the United Nations offices in Tunis, demanding that they be evacuated to other countries. Vincent Makori has more.
These refugees, mostly survivors of attempts at illegal immigration by sea to Europe, have been staging a sit-in in front of the office of the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees in the Tunisian capital. Among the many refugees are women and children. Nearly all of them are spending their nights on boxes.
We want evacuation. We want to be evacuated from this country. We have experienced racism in cafes. We have been attacked in our homes. We just want to be evacuated from this country.
Migrants and refugees from sub-Saharan Africa now living in Tunisia regularly complain of being victims of verbal and physical violence.
The real problem is with the UNHCR because it has abandoned its main role, which is our protection. And instead of doing that, it has left us on the streets. We were living in Zaris, and the UNHCR demanded our evacuation there and cut off all funds and stopped protecting us.
The majority of these migrants were rescued off the coast of Tunisia after their boats capsized while trying to reach Europe.
We will stay here until our demands are met because we have no choice but our immediate evacuation. The UNHCR in Tunisia has left us with no choice.
According to statistics from the Tunisian Forum on Economic and Social Rights, the Tunisian Coast Guard intercepted over 25,000 migrants who were trying to cross the Mediterranean in 2021, almost double the previous year. Vincent Makori, VOA News.
British Interior Minister Priti Patel has overruled reservations from officials about her plan to send thousands of asylum seekers to Rwanda, according to documents published by the government on Tuesday. The plan, unveiled by British Prime Minister Boris Johnson last week, seeks to act as a deterrent to migrants who make illegal boat crossings to Britain from France. It has drawn heavy criticism from political opponents and campaigners. In an exchange of letters with Patel, the top official in the Home Office highlighted uncertainty over the plan's value to the taxpayer. The government says it will contribute an initial £120 million to the scheme. Patel believes that without taking action to stop the crossings, both the monetary costs and the loss of life among those who attempt to navigate the busy shipping channel will rise. The Ukrainian military says Russian forces are focusing on trying to seize full control of the Donetsk and Luhansk regions, strategic areas in the eastern part of the country that would allow Russia to link with the Crimean Peninsula it seized 8 years ago. Russia is demanding the remaining Ukrainian troops in Mariupol lay down their arms, including a fresh ultimatum with a Tuesday deadline. Russian officials say its forces on Tuesday struck more than 1,200 Ukrainian targets with missile and artillery strikes overnight. Drone video shot on Tuesday shows the violent nature of war, with at least a dozen destroyed Russian tanks and armored vehicles in a junkyard in Bucha in Ukraine's northern Kyiv region. Bucha and the northern outskirts of Irpin were the point at which the main body of Russian troops and armor advancing from the northwest was halted after meeting with unexpectedly fierce resistance from Ukrainian force. Ukrainian Deputy Prime Minister Irina Vereshchuk says there will be no humanitarian corridors active for a third consecutive day Tuesday due to a lack of agreement with Russia. Thousands of African students fled Ukraine in February when Russia invaded the country. Some returned home, but many others fled to neighboring Poland. However, they soon discovered that life in Poland as a refugee is vastly different from life as a student in Ukraine. VOA's Karina Chaudhry explains.
I never imagined I could be in this situation, seriously. I could remember I left Ukraine with 2 clothes. We went there to study, but at the end of the day, something happened, and we just have to run for our life, you know. They said safety first, and that is exactly what we did.
Adedayo Akumboboye and Shalom Boladeoku were close to finishing their education at the university in the Ukrainian city of Lutsk when Russia invaded Ukraine. In a matter of days, the Nigerian students found themselves displaced by conflict. Traveling by bus and walking, the pair managed to make it across the border into neighboring Poland. Once inside the country, they faced new challenges.
Even if these people, the black people, would approach the border, they would be pushed to the back of the queue at the Ukrainian border, and then in Poland they would not be admitted accommodation.
Margaret Ohia Novak is a Nigerian-Polish human rights activist. Her organization, the Alliance for Black Justice in Poland, helps African students stranded at the Polish-Ukrainian border. That is how Ohia Novak met Adedayo and Shalom. Ohia Novak says the conflict in Ukraine is demonstrating how race and nationality prevent non-European refugees from getting help.
In Poland, the message was that, oh, we are accepting refugees because these people look like us, and not only in Poland, but in Europe at large, that these people are civilized, that they are white people just like us, and so on. And I started thinking, what would happen to me if I was in this situation? I heard many instances of people, and I know even people that were waiting for the accommodation to come. So we arranged accommodation, and then at the last moment, those people that offered accommodation would say, oh, but it was for real Ukrainian. It was for real refugees, not for somebody that was accidentally here. And obviously, some would say it was because they are black. Explicitly, some would not say it, but it was somewhere in the air.
In March, the Polish parliament passed a law allowing Ukrainian nationals fleeing the war to stay in Poland for 18 months. There, they have access to healthcare and jobs. However, the law does not apply to non-Ukrainian refugees, leaving many Africans without options. Tade Daniel Omotosho runs the group Nigerians in Diaspora Poland. He helps Africans apply for residency permits so they can live in Poland and enroll at universities.
The idea is they don't want you to stay. They just want you to move on. When you come in as a non-Ukrainian, you're just allowed to stay for 15 days. So what we did is that for as many people that want to stay, we made sure that within that 15 days, they put in an application to the Home Office. If they are denied by the Home Office, they would have no option than to either go back home or apply for the asylum program or the refugee program, which is not the best.
Omotosho's organization houses African students in Warsaw while they wait to hear the outcome of their applications. Students like Abanuller Anderson is one of 50 living in this house.
So most of us don't have a dime on us. So having a place to lay your head, having someone to feed you and a lot of it. So I think it's good. It's the best we could have right now.
In Lublin, Ohia Novak is helping Adedayo and Shalom with their residency permits and university applications. But it is complicated and there are no guarantees. Karina Chaudhry, VOA News, Poland.
For more on African student refugees in Poland, I'm joined by Mary Mgawe, host of VOA Swahili TV program Duniani Leo. Mary, welcome to Africa 54.
Thank you so much, Esther, for having me in your show.
Yes, definitely. You are brave. You traveled with Karina to Poland. Share with us what you saw from the African refugee students in Poland and what did they tell you?
You know, the most important thing that I can remember when we arrived there, we expected to see a lot of people, which we did. But then when it comes to the students who were studying in Ukraine and they moved to Poland, they were just there just hoping maybe one day the war will finish and probably they will go back to Ukraine to finish their education. Because some of them, they had only halfway to finish. Imagine you have only one semester left for you to finish your studies, and then they were coming, the war coming, and then they couldn't continue, so they have to come to Poland and expect maybe one day they could join to Poland for their education. It was really hard.
Yeah, I can only imagine you're going there with a hope to come back educated with a degree to go do something back home and do something with your life. But then again, when you spoke to them, was there any desire, having come out of the crisis in Ukraine, they're in Poland, now they're refugees and not students again, did you have a sense of anybody saying, if I had a means to do so, I would go back home to Africa?
They hope to go back home to Africa if they have something to do there. But they stuck in Poland because they're expecting maybe one day they can join education there, university in Poland, and continue with their studies. Some of them, they had a chance to continue while they were there by using online, and some of them they didn't. So they were just sitting there frustrated and waiting. Maybe they will get some good news. Probably they can rejoin to Poland.
I can imagine the frustration, because now the war has gone on since you returned to Washington. The war has continued. It's almost, there's like no hope going back to Ukraine. However, I was surprised, Mary, to learn that there are African activists in Poland at the refugee camps. What kind of services were they offering?
As you know, when you go somewhere different, new place, you believe or you hope to have somebody to hold your hands and to show you this is where to go. You can hold this way, you can see this way, you can sit here. So that's exactly what they are doing. They provide food, shelter, and all of that. They show them the way. Some of them, they just advise them to sit there in Poland and look for means of life for them if they wanted to continue to live in Poland.
Did you find maybe some of them who needed sort of counseling? You know, when you get a situation like this that is quite traumatic, this is not what they were expecting. Yes. Were those activists offering any kind of services like, you know, counseling for them?
According to the activists that we spoke to, they said some of them, yes, especially the women. So they used to bring some people there to their location, the apartment that they rented for them. They come in their house and talk to them and just make sure, bring hope to them and make sure they are comfortable.
Were they able at all to communicate with their families back in Africa?
Definitely, definitely. They have phones, they have laptops, they have all means of communication. They communicated with home, but going back, I did not see that it is going to be very, very easy for them.
Mary, excellent insight. Thank you so much for making it to Poland and back here in Washington. Good to see you.
Thank you, Esther, for having me.
Our thanks to VOA Swahili correspondent Mary Mgawe. We're excited to hear what you think about Africa 54. Africa 54's new Facebook address is facebook.com/VOA Africa. Still to come, we'll hear from the Africa CDC Director on why Africa should invest and build resilient health systems. But first, Heidi Adams tells us what's coming up on Wednesday's Straight Talk Africa.
What does it take to run for political office in your country? So join me, Heidi Adams, on the next Straight Talk Africa. We'll discuss what it takes to run for political office. Africa has the youngest population on Earth, but some of the world's oldest leaders. Does a political candidate's age really matter? What helps and hurts younger candidates who contest in elections across the continent? Not Too Young to Run is the focus of our discussion on the next Straight Talk Africa.
Health, wellness, sport, beauty, medical breakthroughs. Healthy Living cares about your well-being. What are the main health concerns in Africa and around the world? Find out the latest on coronavirus. Connect with our experts and ask them questions.
How long does the virus stay?
Join me, Linord Moudou, in Washington, every week on Healthy Living, right here on VOA.
Africa has battled multiple challenges over the past 2 years in its fight against COVID-19. The United Nations says healthcare on the continent remains one of the weakest in the world. Observers say beyond the COVID-19 pandemic response, investing in healthcare and building resilient health systems in Africa should be a key priority for leaders in Africa. Africa 54 Health Correspondent Linord Moudou discussed the issue with Africa CDC Director John Nkengasong.
Dr. Nkengasong, as the head of the Africa CDC, what else do you see as primary challenges to tackle this pandemic effectively?
There are a series of areas that we need to focus on to get this pandemic under control in Africa, recognizing that there's a sense of optimism around the world that countries are easing lockdowns, which we all salute and congratulate because the vaccination levels in those countries is much elevated. And if you combine the levels of vaccination with natural immunity, it suggests that there's a substantial level of population antibody levels. However, in Africa, we have to look at how do we scale up vaccines, put more vaccines into arms, Second, how do we increase more testing and decentralize the testing and make sure that we move deliberately towards self-testing so that people can test, get up in the morning and you feel that you have some symptoms and then you test, you say, I have COVID, I'll stay home and protect myself so that I don't go to work and spread it or go out there in the community and spread it. And that is what I call democratizing testing. We have to make sure that you have enough the new molecules, the new drugs are available in countries. That way, if we have a new wave and a new variant, you can treat people in a way that you don't overwhelm the health systems of the countries. Because of the lockdown, many people have spent a lot of time in isolation, and that has created more mental issues that we need to look into and create counseling centers that people can actually go to seek medical advice. Simultaneously, in 2022, if we have a chance of turning the tides against COVID in this year.
Improving the continent's health system has been discussed by leaders for years, yet it seems that things are not moving fast enough. How can this be done, and what are, in your opinion, the essential measures to be implemented?
As a continent, Africa needs to embrace the concept of health sovereignty, or otherwise health security autonomy. They have to look at 4 different key areas. One is to promote the manufacturing sector of what we call health security commodities. That is the personal protective equipment, diagnostics, vaccines, and therapeutics. There is no country in the world that can guarantee the health security of its population without investing in those areas. The second area is workforce, not just in terms of responders, but also young and talented Africans who can engage in research and development that will lead to innovation that can create vaccines, diagnostics, and therapeutics. We can talk about technology transfer, but we should also be talking about technology creation from Africa and even exporting it to the rest of the world. Thirdly, we need to look at strengthening institutions. So the bold measures that the head of states of Africa did during the summit by elevating Africa CDC to an autonomous health agency is part of that vision of strengthening national institutions. And lastly, domestic investment and partnership with the private sector is so important. If we do those 4 things as a continent, then the continent is positioned to begin to drive its own health sovereignty and autonomy. Africa requires a new public health order that will reimagine the way that diseases are fought on the continent.
Many people agree that COVID-19 has shifted the attention and resources away from other important issues. What other health emergencies currently need immediate attention?
We have to recognize that we are in the middle of a pandemic, and that even during this pandemic, we have to deal with even other emerging infectious diseases like Ebola. We should always be mindful that the fact that we're dealing with COVID-19 doesn't mean that other emerging diseases will not occur. We have large issues to deal with respect to resistance to antibiotics. We also have the endemic diseases that are ongoing, the HIVs, the TBs, the malarias. They are creating a lot of harm in the community. A combination of HIV, TB, and malaria kills about 1.2 million Africans a year, so we should never forget about that. The rising frequency of non-communicable diseases, the cardiovascular, the diabetes, and others, is so important that we should continue to look at. So we call those syndemics that the continent of Africa must develop partnerships with to address these syndemics.
That was Africa 54 Health Correspondent Linord Moudou speaking to Dr. John Kengasong, Director of CDC. Kenya's Olympic champion Perez Jepchirchir has won the women's Boston Marathon, and fellow Kenyan Evans Chebet dominated a stellar field to claim the men's title. With 1 mile remaining, Jepchirchir moved ahead of Ethiopian Ababel Yeshane, but the Ethiopian refused to bow and retook the lead before the pair battled down the final stretch. Jepchirchir used every ounce of her energy to break the tape in 2 hours, 21 minutes and 1 second, just 4 seconds ahead of our Ethiopian rival. The 28-year-old Kenyan won a seesaw sprint down the stretch as the world's oldest and most prestigious annual marathon returned to its traditional spring start for the first time since the onset of the coronavirus pandemic.
I decided to push the base because I want to run a good time. First of all, I can say thank you. I thank my God for the energy of today. I was not expecting to win, but I'm feeling grateful, and now I can say that I'm believing myself more, and I'm so grateful for today's victory.
The win confirms Jep Chirchir among the most dominant marathon runners of all time. She is the first athlete to claim Olympic gold along with the Boston and New York marathon titles. In BL action, Cameroon defeated South Sudan. Here's VOA's Jackson Bunganyi with the highlights.
South Sudan's duo passes to Wake, who attempts a dunk, but is blocked by Cameroon's Chomchi, which causes some tension between the two. But then Cobra's Den gets the ball to Dio, who also goes for a dunk, but Chomchi is right there again for another incredible block.
Chomchi, the young man, just gets up above the rim. That's the second time he's been challenged.
Up by 11 with under 6 minutes to go in the first half, Fabs Keumo makes a backwards pass to Chomchi, who scores. Leading by 23 points in the third, Cameroon's Morman gets his team 2 more points.
And that's the first score, and it comes from Deshaun Morman.
Fabs Bedias passes to Byers, whose shot is blocked, and Weck picks up the ball, but Morman steals it, although steps on the line. A little over 2 minutes to go in the game, and Fab is up by 9 when Almeida finds Kemfak, who passes to Bedias and gets 2 points. Under a minute left and trailing by 7, but Cobra's Keel passes to Wang, who hits a big 3, cutting Fab's lead to just 4. Wang passes to Ki, who goes up for a final shot but misses, resulting in a win by Fab, who led the entire game and ultimately by 7 points, giving Fab their second win of the conference.
And that's our show for today. Be sure to watch Africa 54 on our website, at our new Facebook page, facebook.com/VOA Africa. From all of us here in Washington, thank you for watching.